Hello and welcome along to Can I Borrow a Feeling? I'm Kurt Van Houten, and today we'll talk to teacher librarian probationary Peter Luck. Today's pre-recorded conversation will cover topics around what is digital equity? How is it related to digital citizenship? What's the current situation in Australian schools? What are the implications given this current situation? And some suggestions around ways forward.
Hi Kurt, thanks for having me along. Look, the 1 minute summary for busy people is essentially success in 21st century life is going to require certain skills, attitudes and practices. But it's important that as educators we guide the application of these so that they're used to attain some sort of social betterment. That is, that they're used in a way that reflects healthy digital citizenship. I want to make the point today that any concept of citizenship which does not actively support the inclusion of already disadvantaged groups is an incomplete one. Schools play a vital role in ensuring that true digital citizenship is possible by provisions that promote digital equity.
Tell me, Mr. Moody, what are your feelings about the radio?
I don't hold with it, Bub.
Displeases you?
I don't hold with furniture that talks.
And we bundle these skills and the participation that goes along with them as a digital citizenship, as citizenship that takes place online. And I think if we go back and we look a bit closely at what we mean when we use the word citizenship, we'll get a sense of why it is that I want to speak today about digital equity. Certainly, if you are a non-citizen in Australia and you would like to become an Australian citizen, the government has a range of media, communication, booklets, etc. to support your knowledge of what it means to be an Australian citizen, so that you can take that test and succeed and get the certificate. What it is clear is that there are values around freedom of speech, freedom of association, freedom of religion, but also around equity, around equality under the law for all Australian citizens, around mutual respect for each other, but also around equality of opportunity. And it's these that I think are really key to understanding that certainly in Australia, when we think of citizenship, we accept the idea that everybody in the community will have access to be participating. And the reality is that digital equity is not yet in place. There's no difference for digital citizenship. If equity is lacking in the system, then the system is not operating the way that it should. We're in the education business to really deliver through schools and through the curriculum the characteristics that are required for digital citizenship, then we must make this initial clear expectation that digital equity is achieved. Oftentimes people talk about the digital divide. The first of these digital divides is really around access. Do people actually have access to devices, to the internet? There's a secondary level. Once people have access, do they have the skills? Do they have opportunities to develop the skills that they need to be successful in using these devices? But increasingly people recognise there's a third divide. And this is an acknowledgement that even when the first level and the second level have been satisfactorily met, there exist entrenched social disadvantages that can lead to different outcomes in these digital citizenship skills. The capacity for people, for vulnerable groups in society to convert the skills they're developing online into real-world opportunities continues to further entrench the disadvantage that they initially faced.
So basically, you're getting twice the base.
I don't know. I don't really know if I need all that base.
Oh, I think you need all that base.
In a wealthy country like Australia, it may seem that we actually have all the metaphorical base we need. But if we look at the current situation, it becomes clear that that is not actually the case. Now, these comments are not a criticism of any particular government or party, but a call to sharpen this focus and to keep a sense of Australian identity as described in the Citizenship book. In order to meet the challenges around digital citizenship, we need to address digital equity. In the Whitlam Institute case study, Digital Equity and Education case study, the current situation was revealed as being quite a stark divide. School staff recognise that digital inclusion is increasingly important in order that students can achieve educational outcomes and also to support or to maintain that continuum of learning between school and home. But what they don't see happening is a corresponding increase in the provision of devices and connectivity. The Whitlam Institute case study looks at the numbers Australia-wide, but also uses case studies around Western Sydney and regional Australia. And what they find is that only around about a third of teachers believe that there is adequate digital access and devices at school for students in these disadvantaged areas. There's similar low numbers in terms of students in those schools, Western Sydney, regional New South Wales, who have adequate digital literacy skills. Similar low numbers, fewer than a third of students who have access at home, either to devices or to broadband, and even lower numbers when we look at the capacity for somebody in the house to support students with these digital skills. That digital citizenship is vital, but uneven inclusion runs the risk of perpetuating the disadvantage that already exists in these locations. A truly inclusive digital citizenship, one which reflects the broader values of Australia, is one where governments, industry, communities work together and they support all students to have the resources that are required. In an Australia where our Constitution is written in such a way it's framed in an attempt to overcome the difficulties associated with the geography of Australia, the internet potentially could be sounding a death knell for this tyranny of distance that we face, but we need to get it right.
Are you aware of jazz music, the movement of jazz?
I hate jazz.
You hate jazz?
Yeah.
You fear jazz? Huh? Ah,
Shut your mouth.
Yeah, you fear jazz, don't you?
No, I don't.
You fear the lack of rules.
No.
The lack of boundaries. Ooh.
And if that's the current situation, the implications of where we stand are even more profound. The United Nations, in a number of reports, acknowledge that there is a strong nexus between equity, development, and citizenship. I focus on rural communities because that's where I'm teaching, and this digital citizenship, the skill package that's developed through these school-based processes is important for students, not just to succeed in school, but the jobs that they will one day move into. In our country areas, modern agriculture, the drip feed irrigation on farming, GPS precision farming, the tracking and monitoring of cattle in a dairy farm, in a beef farm. All of these things are now requiring the precision ploughing processes. You need to be able to understand a whole range of digital technology. If you're in a rural area and you're wanting to work in the mining industry, we know that increasingly the transport networks on site are remote controlled. The mapping, the visualization, the planning of the mining process, all of these workplace activities are now supported by digital technology. Overcoming some of the difficulties associated with living so far away from metropolitan areas, the internet has the capacity to provide a range of occupations that aren't currently available. Maybe it's in marketing, maybe it's in sales. But in order for people to be able to access these things, for young people in regional and rural Australia to have opportunities in these workplaces, they need to develop these sets of skills and they need to have have this equitable access to overcome the disadvantage that already exists. But beyond occupation, beyond economic, beyond the workplace, there are social and cultural necessities around these digital skills, whether it's communication, whether it's the reshaping of national identities and the sort of broadening of a sense of global identity. Activism is increasingly moving online. If we want participative citizenship, then young people need to be able to access activism online, and increasingly access to justice. For people in rural and regional communities where funding is low in the court system, the waiting times can be up to 2 years in the criminal courts. Moving the court system online, moving case management online through digital technology is going to be important for the future. Third level of digital division, the recognition that if we do not address the shortfalls in adequate inclusion and equity, then we're just going to dig deeper into this vicious cycle. Teaching digital citizenship starts with digital equity.
Oh, won't somebody please think of the children?
It's reassuring to know, of course, that many people are thinking of the children, and they're thinking about the adults that these children will become. The federal government has a range of plans and strategies in place. Their data and digital strategy provides resources for parents, for children, for educators, and they also provide links to services that can support people. The Commonwealth Government Digital Technology Hub is another online service that can help people locate the facilities that they'll need. The First Nations Digital Access Plan, the continued rollout of NBN across regional Australia, as well as funding for the black spot programs to overcome difficulties around telephone connection. The New South Wales Government is also playing a part, as they have a connectivity strategy which works on digital inclusion and specifically briefed to address these entrenched disadvantages of communities that have been acknowledged. Within public schools, I work for Department of Education, and within our school system, the $400 million Digital Restart program. There's funding available to schools as priority provision of services through the Rural Access Gap program. DET also support through BOSTES the digital citizenship curriculum. There's a whole suite of professional learning available. The department has created a digital hub where a whole range of resources are available. They make a suite of software available to staff. And most recently, they have actually introduced New South Wales EduChat, which is a generative AI tool for students to access. And while much of the heavy lifting does sit with government, private industry also plays a role. For example, across Victoria, Telstra is involved in a pilot program working with marginalised communities to reduce the barriers to connection. Organisations like the Paul Ramsay Foundation provide grants to communities to overcome disadvantage, to support the flourishing of all Australians to participate in these broad processes. And of course, lots of universities have partnerships with government and private industry to investigate, monitor, report and feedback on the contemporary situation. All of these efforts are aimed at overcoming the first hurdle in delivering digital citizenship to students.
Till next time, this is Kurt Van Houten reminding you to keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars.